We're Robin and Steve. In the last episode, we were crossing the Bass Strait with an engine held together with a baked bean tin in nasty conditions. And we made it, as this yellow dotted line suggests. Once we'd rested from an uncomfortable but not disastrous crossing, Steve pulled apart the exhaust system. The baked bean tin technology was removed. Then we took it to the local shipyard for some welding. Back in Tas, I'd ordered some foods in bulk to minimise on our plastic use. The good people from Sprout Whole Foods in Eden delivered the many boxes to our kayak. Now that's what I call service. Phew, I should have enough oats to last me a little while. We visited the famous Twofold Bay Killer Whale Museum. This is the skeleton of Old Tom. Old Tom and the rest of his pod worked with the whalers to kill the humpback whales. The killer whales were given the lips and tongue of the humpback whale as payment for their services. Check out this day spa. People with various ailments would come and sit in a giant hole cut in the whale. For hours, they stunk for weeks. We lushed out and took a trip to the laundromat. Then I made okonomiyaki as the storm brewed. At least once the rain started, I could practice handstands inside, with my feet on the roof. This turned out to be a once-in-100-year flood event for the coast of New South Wales. See those orange triangles? They were lead lights at night to help us enter the harbour safely, where we tied off to this public mooring for 24 hours. Luckily it wasn't this rough. We watched the other boats get chucked about, just as we were. We didn't sleep well, and we awoke to a strange and foggy morning. The extent of the flooding became clear. We were surrounded by thick, pungent foam, logs and storm debris. At least the wind had eased. We could finally get ashore. Twofold Bay was brown with floodwater. The breakwall was still being pounded by powerful waves. Right at its base, the snake clung to storm debris before being smashed by a wave. Back at the boat, birds had moved in. The excellent Bundian Way story trail took us to Quarantine Bay. Twofold Bay, Turramalera, was home to the Katungal people. Smallpox brought by Europeans decimated the population. Sadly, the floodwaters made it a bit too disgusting to swim. Anyway, another storm hit. With full water tanks, food stores, and even a freshly watered rocket plant, we set off. Once beyond the flood debris, Steve did a spot of fishing. He caught some weed. What we saw next put us off fishing. We saw many dead, bloated pufferfish float by, and then this wall of brown floodwater. We skirted along the edge at first. But then we had to plough through, dodging logs and other debris. Eventually we reached blue water again. Burma. At Burma we went hunting for pizza. It was a successful hunt, and we dined to a light display of a passing storm, and then a surprise fireworks display. We gave extra points to the town of Burma for this recycling centre. We continued sailing north, past popular diving destination Montague Island, famous for its seals. We anchored at Browley Island. It's not really an island, but sea levels are rising. We pushed on again through some big swells towards Bateman's Bay. The swell wasn't so bad once we'd passed the Tollgate Islands. Our ancient cruising guide had mentioned that swimming here can be problematic due to jellyfish. The sea was thick with jellyfish, so we didn't swim. But there was a public mooring buoy off Snapper Island. It's forbidden to land on this island, but we were free to kayak around it. It was an overnight passage next. This was big for me, as we were heading to visit Mum, the place where I grew up. So I was sailing back to my childhood home. I know Mum was excited. There was some action by the time we got to Jervis Bay. A damaged boat was drifting somewhere off the coast. Helicopters were working with naval personnel to try to locate it. By dusk, the submerged ship was behind us, but it was a slow sail through the night. We were fighting the East Australian current, and sometimes only making 2 knots of headway. But eventually, we got to what I thought of as my backyard, the Royal National Park, the world's second oldest national park, with its incredible sandstone cliffs. Once we could see Kurnell and the Sydney skyline, we entered the Port Hacking River to anchor at Gibbon Beach. We could see Cronulla, famous for its beautiful surf and race riots. I was keen to see the rock carvings of the Dharawal people. This was their country for tens of thousands of years, and seeing the rock carvings is one of my earliest childhood memories. The carvings are better protected now than they were, which is lucky because they're over 1,000 years old. We had a good sleep, and in the morning we sailed to Mum's place. This was huge for me, hence the rather epic choice of music. Port Hacking is a crazy mix of jet skis and super yachts, treacherous shifting sandbars, mansions, and gorgeous bushland. I didn't grow up in a mansion, but I'm the first to admit that I was one lucky kid. Once through the worst of the sandbars, I texted Mum to keep an eye out for us. I'll admit I had a lump in my throat as we came around the final corner. To make it easier for us to spot her from the water, Mum was on the balcony, madly waving a bright red bath mat. There's Mum. Unmissable. We set the anchor, knowing that our presence could drag down the value of neighbouring boats. We kayaked to the old reserve. From here it's a steep climb to Mum's place.
Mostly the hunter.
And Mum had zoomed down to meet us.
Oh, the you. There's the national park.
Flashback. I'm the blob in the bottom right-hand corner. So much has changed, but it's good to be back. Join us next time as I hang out with Mum in mangroves, we meet the local turtle, Steve goes up the mast, and then we sail north to Sydney and beyond.